All right, so I'm going to continue on with a few more selection tools. I'm going to come over here and make sure that I have the Lasso Tool selected. Now I'm going to zoom in on this top corner. I'll make really small selections. So with the Lasso Tool, you essentially just click down uh, and just move your mouse, and the lasso will essentially follow you. And wherever you let release your mouse, it'll automatically snap back to the beginning, and you can then delete those pixels. If you cannot delete those pixels, such as in my case right now, I'm hitting the delete key. It's not allowing me to delete those pixels. It's probably because I don't have the layer selected. So just make sure, just come over here to layers, just make sure you have the correct layer selected. And now you should be able to delete those pixels by hitting the delete key. Again, with the lasso tool, if you click down and you start to move your mouse and you go back to where you started, it's essentially, and then just let go, it essentially just makes a selection around that area. And again, just hit the delete key. With using the any of your selection tools, just if you want to add to your selection, right, you can then hold down the shift key. I'll make two overlapping selections. I've now been able to add to the selection. I can, again, delete from the selection by holding down the Option key because I'm on a Mac. And I believe it's the Alt key on a PC. And I can start to delete from my selection. Right? So if I hit the delete key, it's now deleted those pixels. Hit Command D or Control D to deselect those pixels. Another common selection tool that I use quite a bit, I really don't use the lasso tool that much. It's a little bit difficult to control. But another one that I use quite a bit is the Polygon lasso tool. And the way the Polygon lasso tool works is you just do single clicks on your screen. And if you go back to where you started, on the bottom right of your icon, you should see a little circle. And that little circle means you are back to where you started. And if you do a click, it ends your selection, and you've now been able to make a selection. I'm not going to delete these just yet. I'm going to deselect. If you forget where you started, you can always you could always double click. So this is where I'm ending off, for example, and I just do a double click here. And from where your mouse is, it'll automatically go back to the start. Again, I'm going to deselect and try that one more time. Just double click. And again, it just goes back to where I started. Again, using the shortcut keys, I can hold down Shift and add to my selection. Or I can also use my keys up here, where I can now add to my selection. Or I can hold down, or I can subtract from my selection by holding the Option or the Alt key. Or again, use the icons up here to subtract from your selection. And just leave it back here on the default. And now I've added to and subtracted from my selection. And I now have this, and I can hit the delete key and deselect. The last one over here by the lasso tools is the magnetic lasso tool, which is a little tricky to control. I'm just going to do this off to the side. I'm just going to do a single click, and then I'm just going to move my mouse around. And essentially what the lasso tool is doing is it's looking at all your pixels, and it's looking for a contrast in the pixels. If it doesn't find one, you can always just click your mouse to force it to have a selection. And then I'm just going to go back to where I started. And I can see that on my icon, I see a little circle on the bottom right. And it's telling me I'm back to where I started. And I do a click. And I've now made a selection. I can now delete that, deselect that. Just to actually show you a situation where the lasso tool could come in handy, I'm gonna scroll over to where his hat is, and I can see that there's a high contrast between his hat and the background. So for example, if I start selecting over here, I'm just moving my mouse. I'm not actually clicking. Just moving my mouse along the edge of his hat and the background. And again, the magnetic lasso tool is able to recognize the high contrast between the two, so it does a pretty good job of making that selection. Again, if it doesn't, then all you have to do is make a click. Like right here, it's not recognizing it, so I just make a click with my mouse, and I can go all the way around. And I'm just going to go back just by making a couple clicks, going back to where I started. And now I have a selection. I can delete that and deselect. But again, the magnetic lasso tool is a little tricky to use. I don't use it as often. The one that I use the most is the Polygon lasso tool. And with this tool, I'm going to remove a part of this area over here and just working my way down his arm. One last thing I want to explain with this lasso tool. I'm going to start by doing a couple clicks. I'm going to make a lot of clicks, actually. And one nice thing about this tool is as you're working, if you accidentally click in the wrong area, you can always hit the delete key. And every time you hit the delete key, it undoes your previous click. So just go back to the beginning and just hit the delete key, and I'm essentially back to where I started. So I'm going to delete a good chunk of this image. I'm going to start by clicking out here. I'm going to come over to his shoulder. I'm using my shortcuts because when I'm using one of these lasso tools, it's nice just to be able to have the shortcut. There, it accidentally clicked on the wrong one, so I just hit the delete key. And I'm just going to work my way down his arm. Again, I'm just using the shortcut of the spacebar. Again, it clicked on the wrong one, so it just hit the delete key. I'm zoomed in enough where I can see a little bit of definition between his arm and the background, but I'm not zoomed in too much, just so I can make some faster selections. And I'm going to click back out here, move back to where I started. And now I've made one larger selection. So if I hit the delete key now and deselect, I've now deleted a good chunk of this image.